All right. Well, I tell you what, Vince, I'm going to save the rest of these. You ready for rapid fire?
Yeah, let's go, baby.
Let's do it. So, I got to find my questions here as I wanted to start rapid fire. Fill in the blank.
Okay.
Notre Dame's second leading rusher this season will be blank.
Honestly, I think it's going to end up being Jeremiyah Love. He has really impressed me with some long runs and limited amount of action. And I said this on Monday, but Brian leaned over to me when he actually wanted to talk to me. And he said, those other guys better watch out because 12 is coming. And I think he's right. I think he's going to, pick up a bunch of carries moving forward. And I think he's going to make the most of them. So I'm going to go with the freshman.
You know what? I was saying all offseason that I thought Jadarian Price, but
Yep.
Just the way things have worked out so far, I tend to agree. I think that what the burst, the explosiveness, everything that Jeremiyah Love has, what he brings to that room, his breakaway ability.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be him as well. Now, Jadarian Price still has some of that, and it's going to be really interesting to see how some of these reps have split. But I just think that everything that you just kind of detailed there and what Jeremiyah Love has already done and what he can continue to do, I think that it's going to be him. I think the biggest thing is just kind of continuing to make sure that he can pick up the blitz when he's out there on the field.
Sure.
If he's called on in that situation. Because again, there are checks at the line of scrimmage. You can't just go out there and say, we're going to run it. And then they show, something else and it's time to throw it. And then you got to be able to pick up a blitz. So I think it's going to end up being Jeremiyah Love as well. And again, I wouldn't have been saying that obviously a month ago.
Well, and the other thing that's going to be interesting to see this week is since Devin Ford, I'm assuming is probably going to be out. I don't know if that's been officially announced or I'm speculating at this point, but if he is out, how that delineation of touches goes.
We will probably find out tomorrow when we get the noon Zoom.
So when you subtract 1 from the 5, those carries have to go someplace or those reps have to go somewhere. I'm wondering if they go to 12.
Good question. This one goes to 12 is what you're saying. Not just 11, goes to 12. Fill in the blank. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? It's blank. That Stanford athletic director Bernard Muir says based on what he knows, the Notre Dame Stanford series is going to continue to be played annually after Stanford joins the ACC.
Disappointing. That's what it is. It's disappointing. I mean, I love how he's like, well, based on what I know, doesn't make you sound super credible, Mr. Muir, but I hope he's wrong. I hope that once he's a member, that they're a member of the ACC, that they just get on the same rotation as the other ACC schools. That would be my personal hope. I hope that it's not we're going to do that every single year.
Yeah, and that's kind of when this news was coming out beforehand, before it became official, like to me that was the benefit from a Notre Dame standpoint, is that they wouldn't have to play Stanford every year. Now, look, you and I, neither one of us is that thrilled about the Stanford series. Jack Swarbrick and Notre Dame, they obviously consider Stanford a rival. They have done their best to make it a rival. I get the academic connection and all that different kind of stuff. Is it really a rivalry, though? I don't think most fans think it's a rivalry, especially given the current state of Stanford football. They've got a ways to go to get it built back up. And, let's be honest, there are really 2 brief windows in time when Stanford football has ever really been good. And we just came out of one of them. So the odds that they're going to be good year in and year out, I thought it was a good thing that if Stanford was going to join the ACC, very similar to Pittsburgh and Boston College, by the way. Notre Dame used to have fairly regular continuing series with both of those schools. Not that they played them each and every year, but they had pretty, fair for a stretch there. They were playing both BC and Pittsburgh almost annually. And then those 2 teams joined the ACC. and they became part of the ACC scheduling agreement.
Yes.
And so you're still playing them, but you're not playing them every year, which is what I thought that the Stanford thing would do, which I think would be better for Notre Dame. I think that, again, we've talked about it before, especially with UCLA becoming part of the Big Ten next year and the NBC TV contract that now includes UCLA, obviously the entire Big Ten, which includes UCLA and USC. I felt like that might be an option worth exploring that would be better than Stanford. But apparently, at least based on what Bernard is saying, and Bernard, by the way, I guess it's been a while, roughly 20 years-ish ago, he was an assistant athletic director at Notre Dame, but he's been the AD at Stanford for a long time. But neither one of us like it, but our opinions
don't matter.
Don't matter.
Even a little. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Nah.
I want to get to this Brian Kelly thing. So I'm going to start with this.
Oh, you're skipping. All right.
Yeah. Ray asks, no, sorry, wrong one. Josh asks, they both have purple avatars. That's what threw me off. Josh asks, is Coach Freeman a better coach than Brian Kelly already?
No, I would say no, because Brian Kelly does have a ton of experience. He has had a ton of success. It's going to take a little while for Marcus Freeman to catch up to Brian Kelly. Plain and simple. Now, is he a better coach for Notre Dame in this moment? Yes, I will say that, but not as an overall coach. I don't think that's fair. It's not fair to Brian Kelly, to be honest with you. And I don't think we've seen enough from Marcus Freeman to definitively say that. Now, am I happy that Marcus Freeman is the coach and it's not Brian Kelly? Absolutely. That doesn't make him a better overall coach over the long run. Brian Kelly's had a lot of success in his career, right? And we think that Marcus Freeman is that guy to take Notre Dame to the next level, but he hasn't done it yet. Talk to me when Brian Kelly or when Marcus Freeman wins a New Year's Six or wins a Final Four game or wins a national championship. We'll revisit this question. But as we sit right now on September 6th, I'm going to go with no.
Brian Kelly still has a lot more experience. I think you made a great differentiation. Marcus Freeman is the better coach for Notre Dame right now because it begins and ends with the recruiting.
Yeah.
But there's also other, regardless of what anyone outside wants to say, the recruiting, the level of recruiting has gotten better under Marcus Freeman. And the recruiting of specific positions, the skill positions. Like, look at where Brian Kelly is right now at LSU. They brought in some transfer cornerbacks like LSU, like that's in addition to the quarterback issues that have followed Brian Kelly, like the secondary, like look at the issue the secondary was in recruiting when Brian Kelly was here. So and look at where they are now, just a year after he's gone. Like both the running back room and the receiver room and the secondary, all three of those skill position sets are leaps and bounds better right now under Marcus Freeman than they were under Brian Kelly just a couple of years ago. So start with that. One thing Marcus Freeman has shown the willingness to do is adapt and, be a fairly introspective guy on his own. Yeah. Whereas Brian Kelly had to be forced into those situations to really look within. And Marcus Freeman, not that everyone has to be a buddy coach. And I'm not, saying that he's a buddy coach, but he obviously, I saw this thing with Michael Mayer over the weekend. I think it's a fairly old interview, but he was asked about the difference between Brian Kelly and Marcus Freeman. And he's like, Marcus Freeman's around in the summertime when we're doing workouts.
Right.
Brian Kelly wasn't around in the summer. And he said, no, this isn't a knock on Brian Kelly, but I mean, all you've got to do is say it and it's automatically a knock on Brian Kelly. There's just a night and day difference in their personalities, the way they go about things on a daily basis. And so again, I think that Brian Kelly is still the better coach because he's got 3 decades of experience 3+ decades of experience as a head coach compared to a season plus for Marcus Freeman. But I still think that, as you said, Freeman is the better coach for Notre Dame right now.
Yeah. And somebody said, what about Brian Kelly in his second year at Notre Dame? you can't compare the two because Brian Kelly took over a dumpster fire at Notre Dame, and it
Right.
took him a little while to rebuild it.
You still have to give it to Brian Kelly that he
Right.
rebuilt and turned Notre Dame
Yes.
into a developmental program. And that's the thing. One of the things that jumps out at me about Marcus Freeman as well is the developmental aspect to it. Like when you talk about the depth and the fact that they spent training camp working in twos with ones, like number two guys we're mixing in with the other ones and going up against number ones on the other side of the ball. Like, again, for a second year head coach, think about like where Charlie Weiss was. Like again, that's night and day different for the way Charlie Weiss ran his program because he came from an NFL background. Marcus Freeman coached under Luke Fickell, who, along with Brian Kelly, I think that you can argue are two of the better developmental program type builder guys in college football. Like, again, no matter what you think of Brian Kelly's personality and whether you love him or hate him, you still have to recognize the fact that he rebuilt Notre Dame, got him to a championship game and a couple of playoff games as well because of the way he built the program. You can pick apart his recruiting and a lot of different, other ways he did things, but you still have to appreciate the developmental aspect to the program that he runs.
Yep. And I will always give that credit to him. And he brought Notre Dame back to a place that was a perennial 10-win type team. No doubt about it. The knock on Brian Kelly is the big games. And he proved not too long ago that that's still an issue.
Right. That's exactly right. So, speaking of Brian Kelly, this was on the docket for today. And so Brian Kelly, last week in the lead up to the Florida State game, Brian Kelly was quoted as saying, quote, "We're going to beat the heck out of Florida State," end quote. So on Tuesday, yesterday, Brian Kelly said this: "I think you all know me. I'm pretty careful with what I say and how I said it. Never have I been cavalier or disrespectful to an opponent in my 33 years. So if somebody wants to prop up a comment and inflate it into something that it is not, that's what social media is about today. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Florida State coach Mike Norvell. I know who the opponent was. It's just not in my background or nature to make those kinds of comments." So that is the quote from Brian Kelly, saying that he never said that leading up to the Florida State game. Well, fortunately for us, here's a piece of audio from Brian Kelly's coaches show last week.
I think we're in a really good position in year two. Look, I will say that there are still some areas that need to be improved. We're going to take 15 freshmen on this trip and 14 transfers. So nearly 40% of this travel roster are going to go overnight for the first time with LSU. So, and that's not a disclaimer of any kind. We're going to go beat the heck out of Florida State. But I guess what I'm saying is we're still developing our football team with new players, freshman players, transfer players. So we're still in that process of developing, and it's only going to get better.
So there you go, Vince.
I mean,
it's pretty clear there what he said.
I mean, he got cheers. He knows what the crowd wants to hear, number one. Number two, the best part about that is so Brian Kelly, he was already making excuses before the game even kicked off.
And then he tried to say it wasn't an excuse.
Right. I mean, that's the best part about that whole thing.
I know.
He lined up the excuses. 15 freshmen, 14 transfers, and we're still building the program. We're still going to beat the heck out of Florida State, but, there's some issues here. Like, come on, man.
Gonkers 44. I thought this was a Notre Dame show. Nobody's forcing you to listen right now.
Nope.
We've said this before. This is the rapid fire segment. We talk about things other than Notre Dame. Brian Kelly used to be the coach at Notre Dame. We just had a question about Brian Kelly. So we answered the question about Brian Kelly. And quite frankly, when we get the chance, when it's as juicy as this and it's just such low-hanging fruit, I mean, how are we going to resist this opportunity, because like, to me, it's fitting that Notre Dame is at North Carolina State this week, because it's the first time the Irish have played there since Brian Kelly criticized the center for bad snaps in a hurricane, right? And then at the same time, all this other stuff comes up. Like, Brian Kelly is at his best on Monday and Tuesday when it comes to comments, whatever day the press conference happens to be on. That's when Brian Kelly is best during the week.
Yeah,
when he gets to sit back and kind of polish up what he thinks the questions are going to be and have answers ready to go and stuff like that. Like, that's when Brian Kelly is best. Where Brian Kelly is at his worst is after the game, when he has to think on his feet, and when questions kind of come at him that maybe he's not ready for it. Like, but even that answer, like, he seemed like he had his response ready to go, because like you pointed out, Vince, he's already making excuses about the freshmen and the transfers. Here's what I know. After LSU's loss to Florida State, Brian Kelly now has 5 losses of 20-plus points against top 5 ranked teams in just 37 games played against top 5 ranked teams. He has the 3rd most losses all time to top 5 teams by 20-plus points. The other 2 coaches who are ahead of him, Woody Hayes and Joe Paterno, each coached more than 100 games. So congrats on that, Brian Kelly.
Those are just facts. Those are just facts. And in case our buddy's still here, this show is called IB Nation Sports Talk. So we're talking about sports. Just throwing it out there. And I do
beat the heck out of Florida State, but
I love it.
So there you go. All right, now we'll shift gears, and we won't talk about Brian Kelly until the next time he puts his foot in his mouth. And
because I mean, look, that is national news, baby. Like, that's not Notre Dame news. That is national news that he's trying to walk back a comment that he's claiming he never said. Oh, hilarious.
It's very Brian Kelly. So, Vince, how much differently are you looking at the Duke game now after the loss to Clemson the other night, or the win over Clemson, the other night?
Not that much different, to be honest with you, because I think Duke was always kind of that trap game on the schedule to begin with. And I knew Riley Leonard was a good quarterback. I knew Mike Elko was a good head coach and what he did last year. I think they're a plucky team. I think they've got some talent. I think that both teams played incredibly sloppy in the first half of that game, first of all. And I don't know. Yes, the Duke played better than Clemson on that night, but neither team played that great overall. And so I'm not more afraid of Duke as a Notre Dame person, as a Notre Dame fan or analyst. I'm not more afraid of Duke. I was actually less impressed with Clemson, I think, coming out of that game than I was more impressed with Duke, if that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Clemson really beat themselves. Unforced errors with the turnovers, I felt like. Now, Duke was a team that made its way on turnovers last year. They were, I believe, 2nd in the nation in terms of turnover margin last year. And they came up with, more turnovers against Clemson. It was, Clemson moved the ball and got themselves down into the red zone a couple of times and then turned the ball over. So credit Duke for doing what they did, but my opinion of Duke has not drastically changed because of that. If anything, my opinion about Clemson has changed more. I still think Duke is going to be a tough game. Notre Dame's going to have to go on the road the week after Ohio State, different factors like that. And yeah, like Tim is saying, Duke tried not to win also. They just
That's true.
That was really kind of like the Florida State LSU game. Both first halves of those games were just brutal. And then in the second half, floodgates kind of opened for each of the teams that ended up winning those games, and they it ended up looking more lopsided than what it was. So Duke's still going to be a tough game, but I don't consider them any more tough, any like all of a sudden this indomitable force that Notre Dame is going to face after that Clemson game.
Because look, Notre Dame's going to face quarterbacks that are better than Riley Leonard, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to face teams that are better than Duke. It's just where it lands on the schedule and all of those different things. And I think Tim B actually made a really, really good point. He said, it's not a trap game now. They did us a favor since Notre Dame will take them more seriously.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Notre Dame wasn't going to take them seriously, because that's disrespectful to Duke and
But you have even more reason to now. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't want to say they take them more seriously. Of course, they're going to take them seriously. But now it's like, okay, hey, these guys can play. All right, let's go. So I agree with him.
Yeah, concur.
Yep. No doubt.
So speaking of that game, did you see this thing about their quarterback, Riley Leonard? Of course, he has the game of his life and the upset of Clemson. So he goes on social media. He asks his professor for an extension for his homework that was due that night. And his professor's like, nope, your teammates got their homework in. They planned ahead. So who's right? Who's wrong in this? Should the professor have given him some extra time considering what he just did Monday night?
I mean, you know what I do for a living. So I kind of have to say this, although I would have said it to any, like when I was when I was a teacher, I didn't give breaks to athletes by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, a lot of times I made them work harder because they were usually my athletes. But no, he does not deserve any extra time to get his assignment in. There's no reason he couldn't have gotten his assignment in, especially with the way that school is structured these days. Everything's online. Like, there's no excuse. I guarantee you the hotel they were staying in, if they were off campus or whatever, had Wi-Fi. It wasn't even a road game for him. No excuse not to have your assignment turned in, bro Hammer. You gotta get your stuff done.
That's right, Mr. Big Time. You had all day Monday. Like he had
right.
He had Monday morning. He could have been doing some
absolutely
work. You go to Duke, you got to go to class.
Seriously,
on, get your homework turned in.
Seriously, and how big of an assignment could it have been? School's been in session for like 2 weeks.
That's what I was thinking. Like, already you've got this big thing you got to turn in. Come on.
Yeah.
Thanks for the super chat, Tyler. Vince, you have the Cam Hart and Xavier Watts fan club jackets ready because I think they both have interceptions.
Dude, week. If they do that, this game is not going to be close. It's not going to be close at all if both of those guys have picks. I'll say it. So, yeah, I'm ready, baby. I'm ready. Members only.
I agree. Ryan Roberts, rank these Toms. Tom Petty, Tommy Guns, Tom Brady.
Those are such random, like from three corners of the planet.
Yes.
Situation. I'm going to go with that exact order that it's written right here. Tom Petty, Tommy Guns, then Tom Brady.
I agree. I would put it like that as well. I mean, I've got a whole discography of Tom Petty out in my living room that every Saturday and Sunday morning, I about every other, I pop them in. I've got my Tom Petty going, like my daughter's favorite song, I Won't Back Down. It's like, so we walk around singing that.
Down.
There you go. And Brady, he's just Brady. I mean, you've got Tommy Gruns, the king of Massillon. I mean, are you kidding me?
Seriously.
I like that one, though. And then final question, at least for now, how does the new clock impact this particular game? Does one team have an advantage, in your opinions?
Have you noticed the difference with the clock yet?
Was the exact thing I'm going to say. I mean, does the game really look that different with the new clock rules this year?
Like honestly, I said, there's more commercials. I think
when I think it was after the Navy game, I think Jesse and I were talking about it. Notre Dame and Navy actually ran more plays in this year's game than last year's game. With the new rules, they ran more plays this year than last year. I just think that everyone has built this thing up. It's like it's only shaved about 5 minutes and a handful of plays off the game. So I just think there is minimal impact that this clock rule is going to have.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't really even noticed, to be honest with you, because when I start looking at the clock stopping and starting, it's when they're in those drives at the end of a half or end of a game.
Yeah.
And those rules are still the same. And so I'll tell you right now, the Tennessee State game felt very long to me because it felt like there was even more commercials than normal. And it was still 3.5 hours. So I'm not sure what we're doing here, but it's not making the game any shorter.
Yeah. So far. Tom says they say the national average is 10 less plays per game. Yeah, I think it's like 5 per team or something.
Yeah, that's nothing to me.
Yeah.
Like that's negligible is what it is.
Yeah, and basically the way they've explained this is they're looking at the cum effect on this, because over the course of an entire season, when you expand that out, if you eliminate like 8 to 10 plays per game, by the end of the season, you have eliminated essentially the same amount of plays as one entire game. And the reason, again, the way they've explained it, the reason they're doing it is because next year you're expanding the playoff, so you're going to be adding a lot more games for the teams that make the playoffs. So they're trying to, take away some of the impacts and stuff like that. But at the same time, they're not that concerned about helmet-to-helmet hits on kickoff. So
seriously,
it's at the bottom of the priority list, apparently.
Terrible.
All right, well, good show tonight. We're going to wrap it up with that. Jesse and I have a fantasy football draft tonight. He'll be here tomorrow, so we'll let you know how that goes. I've got the number one pick in my draft tonight.
Oh,
first time in I don't know how long I've had the number one pick. So
now, is that because you came in last year?
No, we did the.
Okay, all right.
We've got some new teams, so they did the draw out of the hat kind of thing.
Okay.
So
not going with Travis Kelce, probably.
No, I won't be going with Travis Kelce or Cooper Kupp.
Hey, real quick, we got about 10 seconds left in the chat. Who does Sean take first in the draft? Come on.
Oh, I know who I'm taking, baby.
Well, I know. I'm sure you do know, but I'd like to see what people think you should do.
Number one is not the problem. It's like, you get number one. That means, we've got a 10-player league. That means I don't draft again until 20. So that's, I'm taking Justin Jefferson. I'll just let the whole world know.
TJ Fallon, he's in there with you.
As much as I want to take one of the two running backs, either Christian McCaffrey or Austin Eckler, because there's like more, there are fewer like high-end running backs and there are more receivers. I'm concerned about injury, more concerned with the injury with the running back. So I'm going to take the most productive receiver that I can, because we also play in a points, PPR, point per catch, point per reception league. So
makes sense.
All right. It's a good day because I'm not. BK says he got the number one pick in his league. Have you drafted already? Who'd you take? Did you take Justin Jefferson? Any good rookie running backs? I'm eyeballing a rookie potentially.
See, now you can't give away your secrets now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I don't think Jesse's watching, but we're drafting here in a couple hours. So I got to get this show posted and all that kind of stuff after the fact. All right. Well, thanks again. Hit the like button on your way out. We've got, I saw somebody complimenting the whiteboard earlier. Jess will have some whiteboard for us tomorrow. We'll hit, I believe, a little offense and a little defense for this Notre Dame, North Carolina State matchup. So whiteboard Thursday, we'll have some Marcus Freeman comments as well from his noon Zoom with the media. And of course, more rapid fire after that. Hit the like button and subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.